Walt Disney visited the 1800s historical set at the now abandoned Frontier Town in Hudson, New York in the 1950s under the guise of a film director scouting locations for an upcoming film. In actuality, he was more likely scoping ideas to influence one of his new lands for his new Disneyland park, and he liked what he saw. A nice blend of fact and fiction in the newly popularized Hollywood Western style. Guests who crossed the Disneyland Bridge on its opening day would no doubt see the influences and find themselves immersed in what seems like a thriving Western town, just like in the movies.
Frontierland, the color, romance, and drama of frontier America as it developed from wilderness trails to roads, riverboats, railroads, and civilization.
Stepping into Frontierland was like stepping into a storybook version of the past, rather than an actual historic one. The cobblestone paths, sandblasted every morning, contrast the building's color scheme perfectly to evoke a particular mood, all part of the Imagineer's design, and prone to change every decade or two. In designing the Magic Kingdom's Frontierland, the Imagineers made the bold move to disconnect Frontierland from the central hub and instead have guests enter through the new one-of-a-kind Liberty Square, the West Coast answer to Orleans Square. Like at Disneyland, the steaming smokestacks of the Riverboat are often the first thing guests see and hear, ready to make its way down the mighty American rivers. Frontierland reveals the Western town as established by Disneyland, part history and part Hollywood, with the iconic Western buildings of the town, the general store, and the bustling Golden Horseshoe, inviting guests inside for a rollick and good time. And looming behind the rivers of America, the wide-open wilderness only accessible by a steam train or riverboat. Frontierland contained just 3 attractions in 1971 for the Magic Kingdom's opening. The Frontierland Shooting Arcade, Davy Crockett's Explorer Canoes, and the world debut of the Country Bear Jamboree. The story of the Country Bears begins in the 1960s in the snow-capped mountains of Colorado, USA. While secretly scouting the land for the Disney World Resort all across America, Walt stumbled upon the site where he intended to build a ski resort in the Mineral King Valley. As a Disney resort, Walt wanted entertainment for its guests, featuring musical singing bears. The project was assigned to none other than legendary animation artist and Imagineer Marc Davis, who, together with Albertino, came up with many different proposals, from marching bear bands to mariachi bands and even Dixieland bears. Until one day, a few weeks before Christmas 1966, when plans for Disney's Mineral King Ski Resort had been replaced with the top-secret Florida project. Davis was working on drawings of the characters in his office when Walt walked in sick from his recent cancer diagnosis and began to laugh at a collection of drawings Davis had done, one of them a bear playing a tuba. As he left, Walt turned and said goodbye, something Disney was never known to do. Walt Disney died just a few days later, in December of 1966. It ultimately became a showcase attraction of the Magic Kingdom on its opening day. The Country Bear Jamboree was an instant success. In fact, it received so much good feedback, the Disney Imagineers immediately started plans for a replica of the show for Disneyland and eventually Tokyo Disneyland. After its 1971 opening, Frontierland saw several significant expansions that gave us the land we know today. The first element of Thunder Mesa to make it in did so almost immediately in May of 1972 when the old Frontierland Railroad station opened a few feet northwest of the Pecos Bill Cafe. When the plans for Thunder Mesa fell through, much of its best features were dissolved into smaller attractions, starting with the train station, and again in 1973 when the trails and rafts of Thunder Mesa were moved to the island's center of Rivers of America, connecting Frontierland to Liberty Square. Tom Sawyer's Island was a reimagined remote island playground with trails spread throughout, and only accessible by boarding a raft and crossing the river, another idea also taken from the Thunder Mesa project. The playground is said to represent America's literary past, and its islands are connected by a walking bridge connected to caves and are even home to a fort to explore. The islands were also home to a lost tradition that is now park legend. From its opening until 2012, each morning before rope drop, cast members would hide paintbrushes around the island for lucky guests to find. Those who did could return them for a complimentary fast pass for their favorite ride. Back on the mainland, the vast land just between the old railroad and the rivers of America is the land where Thunder Mesa was intended to go. It's hard now to imagine Magic Kingdom's Frontierland without the two iconic mountain rides that now call it home. But that's how it was for almost a decade after the park's opening, as the land sat there vacant for many years. Until Tony Baxter, a pupil of the now retired Mark Davis, proposed severing other elements of Thunder Mesa's design and building them as two separate attractions, the first to be called Thunder Mountain Railroad.